Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the big window. Europa Station was quiet today, just like every other day for the past 2 years. The mining ships came and went. The cargo haulers moved supplies between Earth and the outer colonies. Everything was normal. Then the alarm started screaming. "Captain, we have contacts coming out of hyperspace," Lieutenant Ben Parker called from his station. His voice was tight with worry. "Big ones, sir." "Really big." Jake moved to the main screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12 massive ships appeared in the darkness of space. They were unlike anything humans had ever built. Black metal twisted into strange shapes. Red lights pulsed along their sides like a heartbeat. Each ship was 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel. "Get me Admiral Hayes on Earth," Jake ordered. Now, the communication screen flickered to life. Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared, her gray hair pulled back tight. She had been Earth's top military leader for 10 years. When she saw the alien ships on Jake's display, her face went pale. "How many?" she asked. 12 confirmed. "Maybe more coming." Jake's hands moved over his controls. "They're not responding to our signals." "All stations, this is Admiral Hayes." Lisa's voice went out to every human ship and base in the system. "We have first contact with unknown vessels." All military ships moved to defensive positions. Civilian craft begin evacuation procedures. The alien ships moved toward Europa Station like hunting wolves. They were fast, much faster than anything humans could build. Jake watched his tactical display as his small fleet of 6 ships moved to intercept. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force." Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came in perfect English, which somehow made it worse. "Primitive species. You will submit to the Zirathi Empire or face destruction. This is your only warning." The voice was cold and mechanical. It carried no emotion, no mercy. Jake felt his crew tense around him. They had all hoped that first contact with aliens would be peaceful. They had dreamed of trade and friendship among the stars. This was not what they had planned for. "I am Overlord Vexthal of the Zirathi Third Fleet," the voice continued. "We have conquered 47 star systems. Your resistance is meaningless. Submit now and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Hayes cut into the channel. "This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Defense Command. We are a peaceful species, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. Withdraw from our space, and we can discuss this." The alien overlord laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "You think to bargain with us? Your ships are toys. Your weapons are sticks and stones. Watch and despair." One of the alien ships fired. A beam of pure energy lanced out and struck the defense platform near Europa Station. The platform, which housed 200 people, simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was scattered atoms floating in space. "Open fire," Jake ordered. "All ships, engage the enemy." The human fleet fired everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams reached out toward the alien ships. The weapons that had taken humanity years to perfect struck the Zirathi vessels and did nothing. The beams bounced off their hulls like light off a mirror. The missiles exploded harmlessly against their shields. In return, the aliens fired again. The cargo ship New Boston exploded in a ball of fire. The patrol ship Denver was cut in half. Within minutes, half of Jake's fleet was gone. "Fall back," Admiral Hayes ordered. All ships retreat to Mars Station. As the human ships ran, the aliens destroyed Europa Station. Jake watched on his rear display as the home to 50,000 people was reduced to burning metal and frozen air. The Zirathi were not just killing people. They were making a point The retreat to Mars took 3 hours. 3 hours of running, while the aliens followed at their own pace, like cats playing with mice. They could have destroyed the fleeing human ships at any time. Instead, they let them run down at Mars Station. Admiral Hayes was already coordinating the defense. Every ship in the system was converging on Mars. Military vessels, cargo haulers, even civilian yachts were being armed with whatever weapons could. Be found. Report, Hayes demanded as Jake docked. Their shields are perfect, Jake said, still shaking from what he had seen. Our weapons cannot touch them. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons cut through our hulls like paper. Admiral. Hayes stared at the tactical display. The 12 alien ships were taking position around Mars. More ships were arriving through hyperspace. The Zirathi were bringing their full fleet. How many people lived on Europa Station? She asked quietly. 50,000, Jake answered. Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard as steel. Get me President Sullivan on Earth, she ordered. We need to evacuate the outer colonies, all of them. The communication with Earth was full of static. President Kate Sullivan appeared on the screen, her face grave. Behind her, Jake could see the emergency cabinet meeting in session. Admiral, what's our situation? We're outgunned, outmanned, and outclassed, Hayes reported. The aliens want us to surrender, or they'll kill everyone. They just destroyed Europa Station to make their point. President Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Recommendations? Buy time, Hayes said. Get our people out of the outer colonies. Bring everyone back to Earth. Maybe we can negotiate. As if he had been listening, Overlord Vexthil's voice cut into their transmission. Humans of Earth, you have seen our power. Your outer colony burns because you resisted us. We offer you one final chance. Surrender your worlds to the Zirathi Empire. Become our slaves. Live in service to your betters. Refuse, and we will turn your planet into ash and bone. You have 1 day to decide. The transmission ended. On the screen, President Sullivan looked older than her 60 years. Admiral, begin evacuation of all outer colonies immediately. Bring everyone home. Yes, ma'am, Hayes replied. What about the aliens? Sullivan's jaw set in a hard line. They want an answer? They'll get one. But first, we need to make sure our people are safe. Jake watched as orders went out across the solar system. Every ship that could fly was pressed into service. The great evacuation began as millions of humans fled toward Earth, leaving behind the worlds they had built with their own hands. The aliens waited and watched. They had seen this before. Primitive species always ran when faced with Zirathi power. Soon, the humans would surrender like all the others had. They had no idea what was coming next. President Kate Sullivan stood before the cameras, her face calm, but her eyes burning with cold fire. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung in the emergency session hall. World leaders filled the seats, all of them waiting for her. Words. Citizens of Earth, she began, her voice steady and clear. Yesterday, an alien force calling itself the Zirathi Empire attacked our colonies. They murdered 50,000 innocent people on Europa Station. They demand our surrender. She paused, letting her words sink in across the world. They have made a terrible mistake. They think that by showing us their strength, they can break our spirit. They believe that humans are weak. They are about to learn otherwise. Across the planet, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In homes and offices, in factories and farms, humanity held its breath. The aliens wanted to see what humans do when cornered, Sullivan continued. They are about to find out. As of this moment, Earth is on a war footing. Every resource, every mind, every hand will be turned toward one goal. We will not just defend ourselves. We will make sure these creatures never threaten anyone again. Doctor. Alex Chun was already at work before the president finished speaking. The Prometheus Project had been humanity's most secret research program. For years, Alex and his team had worked on weapons too dangerous to test, too extreme to build. Projects that peaceful nations would never approve. Now, Alex had unlimited funding and no restrictions. Bring me everything, he told his assistant, Julie Barnes, as they rushed through the underground labs beneath Colorado. Every project we shelved as too risky. Every weapon we called too dangerous. Every idea we said was too crazy to work. Julie's tablet showed a list of abandoned research projects. Quantum singularity weapons, antimatter bombs, biological warfare systems, computer viruses that could think for themselves, planet-killing devices, weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Alex, some of these could destroy Earth if they go wrong, Julie warned. Alex stopped walking and looked at her. Julie, the aliens are going to destroy Earth anyway. At least this way, we take them with us. High above them, the evacuation continued. Every day brought more ships from the outer colonies. Mars Station was being stripped of everything useful before the aliens could take it. The asteroid mining platforms were being abandoned, their crews fleeing toward Earth. Colonel Sam Rodriguez watched the refugee ships arrive at Luna City. Families clutched their few belongings as they stepped off the transports. Children cried for pets left behind. Old people stared at the Earth below, wondering if they would ever see home again. Colonel, his aide, Sergeant Mary Foster, approached with a tablet. We have the volunteer list for Operation Last Stand. Sam looked at the numbers and felt sick. Over 2 million people had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Men and women ready to die if it meant taking aliens with them. How many do we need? He asked. Dr. Chun says 50,000 for the first wave. Another 100,000 in reserve. Sam nodded. The volunteers would pilot ships loaded with experimental weapons straight into the alien fleet. Most would die in the attempt. All of them knew it. None of them cared. Meanwhile, the Zirithi were growing impatient. Overlord Vexthul watched the human evacuation with amusement. He had seen this many times before. Primitive species always ran when faced with superior power. How long until our reinforcements arrive? He asked his second-in-command. 3 days, Overlord. The 4th and 5th fleets will join us before we attack Earth. Vexthul nodded. Good. When they arrive, we will show these humans what happens to species that waste our time. On Earth, President Sullivan met with her military advisors in the deep bunkers beneath Washington. The room was full of screens showing the approaching alien fleet and the frantic preparations on Earth. Status report, she ordered. Admiral Hayes spoke first. All outer colonies evacuated. We saved 8 million people. Lost about 50 ships in the process, but the aliens let most of them through. They want us to know they could have stopped us, Sullivan realized. They are playing with us. General Bob Carter, head of Earth's ground forces, cleared his throat. Ma'am, we need to discuss surrender. Our weapons cannot touch their ships. When they reach Earth, we cannot stop them. The room went quiet. Everyone knew he was right. The aliens had technology centuries ahead of humanity's. Earth's fleets would be swept aside like toys. President Sullivan smiled. It was not a nice smile. General, the aliens made us an offer. They said we could surrender and become their slaves. They think we have only 2 choices, submit or die. She stood up and walked to the main display showing Earth. They don't understand humans very well. We have a 3rd choice. We can make sure that when we die, we take them with us. And we can make it hurt. Dr. Chun's voice came through the speakers. He was calling from his lab. Madam President, We have the first batch ready for testing. The quantum disruptor warheads are online. We also have the nano plague ready for deployment. Time. Frame? Sullivan asked. 72 hours for full production. We will have enough weapons to arm every ship in the fleet. On the screen, the alien ships continued their slow approach toward Earth. They were in no hurry. They believed the outcome was certain. Captain Jake Morrison was working around the clock to prepare the defense fleet. His ship, now renamed the Thene. Vengeance was being fitted with Dr. Chun's experimental weapons. The engine room had been turned into a bomb. If the ship was destroyed, it would take half the alien fleet with it. Jake, Admiral Hayes found him in the weapons bay. "How are your people holding up?" Jake looked tired. He had not slept in 3 days. "They are angry, ma'am. Really angry. Losing Europa Station hit everyone hard. A lot of us had friends there." "Good." Hayes said, "Angry is good. Angry keeps you alive." "Admiral, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you really think we can win this?" Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Win? Maybe not. But we can make sure they remember us. Every species they conquer from now on will hear the story of what happened when the Zerthi attacked Earth. They will know that humans do not go quietly. Back." In the labs, Dr. Chun was putting the finishing touches on humanity's revenge. The weapons they were building violated every treaty Earth had ever signed. They were designed to cause maximum pain and destruction. Some would poison entire worlds. Others would turn the aliens' own technology against them. "Julie, are you sure about the computer virus?" Alex asked. Julie nodded. "It will spread through their network in ours. Their ships will turn on each other. Their weapons will fire at their own people. Their life support will fail. And the biological component? Designed specifically for their physiology. It will take days to kill them. Very painful days." Alex felt a moment of doubt. These weapons were horrible beyond description. In peacetime, he would never have considered building them. But the aliens had made their choice when they murdered 50,000 innocent people. Now they would face the consequences. As the second day passed, more alien ships arrived. The Zerthi fleet grew larger and more threatening. They sent messages to Earth, demanding surrender. Each message was more threatening than the last. President Sullivan did not respond. She was too busy preparing humanity's answer. On the third day, as the alien fleet moved closer to Earth, Dr. Chun made his final report. "All weapons ready, Madam President? The fleet is armed and prepared. Thank you, Doctor." Sullivan turned to address her cabinet one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, in 6 hours the aliens will reach Earth. They expect us to surrender or die. Instead, we are going to show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." She walked to the window and looked up at the sky where the alien ships waited. "They brought hell to our doorstep. Now they get to see what hell looks like when humans bring it to them." The Zerthi fleet moved toward Earth like a storm of death. Overlord Vexthal stood on his command bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger on his screens. Soon, this world would burn like all the others had burned. The humans would die, and the Zerthi Empire would claim another victory. "Overlord," his tactical officer reported, "the human fleet is moving to intercept us." Vexthal laughed. The sound echoed through his ship like breaking metal. "How many ships?" 200, Overlord. "Small vessels, mostly. Nothing that can threaten us. Let them come. We will destroy them quickly and then finish their world." But something was different this time. The human ships were not running. They flew straight toward the Zerthi fleet without fear. Their formation was tight and disciplined. They looked like warriors, going to their deaths with pride. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the alien ships grow larger. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew They were probably going to die in the next few minutes. Nobody spoke about it. All ships. This is Admiral Hayes. The voice came through their speakers. Today we stand for every human who ever lived. We stand for our children and their children. We stand for the 50,000 people who died on Europa Station. Make them count, people. Make every shot count. Jake opened the channel to his crew. This is the captain. In about 5 minutes, we are going to show these aliens what humans do when they get angry. Dr. Chun's quantum disruptor is armed and ready. When we fire it, it will tear a hole in space itself. It will take us with it, but it will take them too. He paused, looking around at the faces of people he had served with for years. It has been an honor serving with all of you. The first exchange. A fire began when the fleets were still 1,000,000 kilometers apart. The Zirathi opened up with their energy weapons, expecting to sweep the human ships aside like insects. Red beams of death lanced across space. The humans fired back. What happened next shocked the aliens to their core. The human weapons were different now. Instead of the crude missiles and energy beams they had used before, new horrors leaped from their ships. Jake fired the quantum disruptor first. The weapon reached out and grabbed a piece of space itself, then twisted it into impossible shapes. A black hole the size of a building appeared in the center of the Zirathi formation. It lasted only seconds, but in that time it swallowed 3 of their massive ships completely. Other human ships fired weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Missiles that phased in and out of reality, passing through shields as if they were not there. Energy beams that turned matter into its component atoms. Nanobots that ate through alien hull metal like acid. What is happening? Vexthal screamed at his officers. How are they doing this? His ships were dying. The weapons that had conquered 47 star systems were useless against technology that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Commander Sarah Blake led the first boarding parties onto the alien ships. Her soldiers wore armor that pumped combat drugs directly into their bloodstream. The drugs made them faster, stronger, and unable to feel pain or fear. They were chemical berserkers, barely human anymore. The aliens had never faced anything like them. When Sarah's team cut through the hull of a Zirathi cruiser, they found corridors full of enemy soldiers. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and multiple arms. They carried weapons that could cut through steel. None of it mattered. Sarah's berserkers moved through the ship like death itself. The combat drugs made them impossible to stop. When alien weapons tore through their armor, they kept fighting. When they lost limbs, they kept fighting. They only stopped when their hearts stopped beating. Bridge secured, Sarah reported over the radio. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the sound of alien screams in the background. Moving to engine room. Dr. Chun watched the battle from his underground lab. The weapons he had created were working better than he had hoped, but the best was yet to come. Julie, release the Pandora virus, he ordered. Julie's fingers hesitated. Over the keyboard. Alex, once we do this, there is no taking it back. This virus will spread through every computer system they have. Do it. The virus launched from hidden satellites around Earth. It was invisible, spreading through space at the speed of light. When it reached the alien ships, it slipped through their communication systems like water through a crack. Within minutes, the Zirathi fleet began turning on itself. Ship computers decided their own vessels were enemies. Weapon systems fired at their sister ships. Life support systems shut down. Navigation computers sent ships crashing into each other. Overlord. His tactical officer shouted over the chaos. Our computers are malfunctioning. The systems are attacking us. Vexthal watched in horror as his mighty fleet tore itself apart. Ships that had conquered worlds were now firing on each other. The humans had turned their own technology into a weapon against them. But the humans were not done. President Sullivan watched the battle from Earth Command, her face hard as stone. The aliens were dying, but not fast enough, not with enough pain. Dr. Chun released the biological weapon. High above the battle, satellites opened and released clouds of engineered bacteria into space. The bacteria were designed to survive in vacuum and to hunt for one specific type of DNA, Xerathi DNA. When the bacteria reached the alien ships, they slipped through the smallest cracks in the hulls. They found the ship's life support systems and began to multiply. Within hours, every breath the aliens took would be filled with death. The biological weapon was Dr. Chun's masterpiece of horror. It did not kill quickly. Instead, it attacked the aliens' nervous systems, causing incredible pain for days before death. It was designed to make them suffer as they had made humans suffer. Lieutenant Ben Parker watched from his fighter as the great alien ships began to drift powerless through space. Some were on fire. Others had been torn apart by their own weapons. A few were trying to flee, but human pursuit ships followed them like hunting dogs. Control, this is Parker. The alien fleet is broken. Repeat, the enemy fleet is broken. The cheers that went up from Earth could be heard across the solar system. Humanity had done the impossible. They had not just survived the alien attack. They had won. But Jake Morrison was not cheering. He stood in the wreckage of his bridge, looking at the drifting alien ships. Half his crew was dead. The Vengeance was barely holding together. Around them, space was full of debris from both fleets. Admiral Hayes, this is Morrison. What are your orders? Hayes' voice came through the static. Secure any alien survivors for interrogation. Salvage what technology you can. And Jake? Yes, ma'am? Send a message to any alien ships that might be watching. Tell them what happens when someone attacks Earth. As the human fleet moved through the wreckage, they found very few alien survivors. Most had died when their ships turned on them. The few who lived were captured and brought to Earth for questioning. From these prisoners, humanity learned about the Xerathi Empire. They learned about the 47 worlds that had been conquered. They learned about billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy. They learned about other alien species who lived in fear of Xerathi fleets. Most importantly, they learned where the Xerathi came from. President Sullivan addressed the world again that evening. Behind her, the wreckage of the alien fleet burned. In Earth's sky like new stars. Citizens of Earth, we have won our first battle. But this is not the end. This is the beginning. The aliens who attacked us rule an empire built on the suffering of innocent species. They have enslaved entire worlds. They have murdered billions. She paused, her eyes reflecting the light of burning alien ships. We cannot allow this to continue. Humanity will not rest while these creatures threaten others as they threatened us. We will carry the fight to them. We will free the enslaved worlds. We will make sure that no species ever suffers under Xerathi rule again. In his underground lab, Dr. Chun was already working on new weapons. The Xerathi had shown humanity what war in space looked like. Now humanity would show them what happened when Earth went to war. The aliens had brought hell to humanity's doorstep. Now humanity would bring hell to theirs. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the war room beneath Washington, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked every known Xerathi world. There were dozens of them, spread across hundreds of light years. Each dot represented billions of lives under alien rule. Operation Retribution begins today, she announced to the assembled fleet commanders. We are not going to their worlds as liberators. We are going as executioners. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral after the Battle of Earth, studied the target assignments. His new fleet of 12 ships was headed for the Zirithi industrial world of Kethmer. Intelligence said it housed their main weapon factories and 15 billion aliens. Admiral Hayes, Jake asked, what about civilian populations? Hayes turned to look at him. Her eyes were cold as space itself. They had their chance to be civilians when they chose not to stop their military from attacking us. Every Zirithi world that does not surrender immediately will be treated as a military target. Dr. Alex Chun had spent the past month creating new horrors. The weapons being loaded onto the human fleet made the ones used at Earth look like toys. Planet cracker bombs that could split worlds in half. Biological weapons that would turn their atmosphere into poison. Computer viruses that would make their technology murder them in their sleep. Julie, are you sure about the planet killer? Alex asked as they watched the massive weapon being loaded onto Jake's flagship. Julie Barnes checked her tablet. The quantum resonance bomb will destabilize the planet's core. The whole world will tear itself apart in about 6 hours. Anyone on the surface will have time to evacuate if they start immediately. And if they don't evacuate, then they burn with their world. The human fleet that left Earth 3 days later was unlike anything that had ever been built. 50 ships, armed with weapons that violated every law of civilized warfare. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a solar system. Each crew was filled with people who remembered Europa Station. Lieutenant Ben Parker piloted one of the new fighter craft. His ship was small, but carried a weapon that could crack a moon in half. Like every pilot in the fleet, he had volunteered for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. Ben, his squadron leader, Captain Tony Martinez, called over the radio, "Remember the rules of engagement. Any ship that does not surrender immediately gets destroyed. Any planet that resists gets cracked. Any alien that fights back gets no mercy." "Understood, sir." "What about species that are not Zirithi? Intel says there are slave species on some of these worlds. If they surrender and cooperate, we evacuate them before we destroy the planet. If they fight alongside the Zirithi, they die with them." The first target was a mining world called Vexthara. When the human fleet arrived, they found a planet covered in massive strip mines worked by slave labor. The orbital defense platforms were old and weak compared to human technology. Admiral Jake Morrison broadcast a simple message. "This is the Human Defense Force. All Zirithi military personnel have 30 minutes to surrender. All non-military personnel have 6 hours to evacuate the planet. After that, this world will be destroyed." The alien response was what they expected. The orbital platforms opened fire with everything they had. Their energy beams bounced harmlessly off human shields. Their missiles were shot down before they could reach their targets. The human response was swift and terrible. Ben Parker's fighter squadron destroyed the defense platforms in minutes. The weapons that had protected this world for decades were turned into scrap metal floating in space. On the planet below, chaos erupted. The Zirithi garrison tried to organize a defense while millions of slaves ran for the evacuation ships. Some of the slave species had never seen the sky before. They had been born in underground mines and worked there their entire lives. Admiral Morrison came a transmission from the planet. "This is slave leader Krell of the Vorthan people. We will cooperate with your evacuation. Please do not harm our children." Jake felt something twist in his stomach. These were not the monsters who had attacked Earth. These were victims, enslaved by the same creatures who had murdered 50,000 humans. "Understood, Krell. Get your people to the evacuation zones. We will hold our fire until everyone is." Clear. But not all the slave species were grateful. Some had been broken by centuries of slavery. They fought alongside their Zirithi masters. Believing that resistance was hopeless. Commander Sarah Blake led the ground teams that secured the evacuation zones. Her soldiers were still using the combat drugs that turned them into berserkers, but they tried to distinguish between slaves and slavers. Contact, contact, one of her soldiers reported. Mixed force of Zirathi and slave troops moving on Evacuation Zone 3. Sarah's voice was calm over the radio. Rules of engagement are clear. Anyone shooting at evacuees dies. No exceptions. The battle for the evacuation zones was brutal but short. Human soldiers moved through the mining complexes like death incarnate. The combat drugs made them unstoppable. The experimental weapons made them deadly beyond belief. When the 6 hours were up, over 3 million slaves had been evacuated. The Zirathi garrison was dead to the last soldier. The planet was empty except for the mining equipment and the bones of those who had chosen to fight. Admiral Morrison gave the order from orbit. Fire the planet cracker. The quantum resonance bomb struck the planet's surface and burrowed deep into the core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground began to shake. Massive cracks appeared across the continents. The mining equipment that had operated for centuries collapsed into bottomless chasms. Within 6 hours, Vextara tore itself apart. The planet that had produced weapons for the Zirathi Empire became an expanding cloud of rock and metal. The message to other Zirathi worlds was clear: surrender or die. But the Zirathi Empire was not ready to surrender. On their capital world of Zirith Prime, High Overlord Zexthan watched the reports from the human attacks with growing rage. "How many worlds have we lost?" he demanded. 7 so far, High Overlord. The humans are using weapons we cannot understand. They destroy our fleets in minutes and crack our planets like eggs. Zexthan slammed his fist on the command console. These primitives dare to challenge us? Send the 1st through 5th fleets to stop them. High Overlord, the 1st fleet was destroyed at their homeworld. The 2nd and 3rd fleets have not reported in for days. The truth was becoming clear. The humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. Every Zirathi fleet sent against them was destroyed or simply vanished. Every world that resisted was turned into rubble. On Earth, President Sullivan received reports from the expanding war. Human fleets were spreading across Zirathi space like a plague. Everywhere they went, alien worlds burned. The species that had conquered 47 star systems was being systematically exterminated. "Madam President," Dr. Chun reported from his lab, "we have intercepted Zirathi communications. They are requesting a ceasefire." Sullivan smiled. It was the same cold smile she had worn when the aliens first attacked Earth. "What are they offering?" "Complete withdrawal from human space. They promise never to attack Earth again." "That is not enough." "Ma'am?" "Dr. Chun, the Zirathi Empire has enslaved dozens of species. They have murdered billions of innocent beings. A promise to leave us alone is not justice for their crimes." She walked to the window and looked up at the stars where human fleets were carrying death to alien worlds. "Send them a message. Tell them they had their chance to leave us alone. They chose war instead. Now they get to live with the consequences." Admiral Hayes coordinated the expanding offensive from Earth Command. Human fleets were attacking Zirathi, worlds faster than the aliens could respond. The weapons Dr. Chun had created were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Status report," she demanded. 17 worlds cracked. 4 more under attack. 36 slave species liberated. Zirathi? Military resistance is collapsing. Good. What about their capital world? Admiral Morrison's fleet is 3 days out from Zirith Prime. The planet is heavily defended, but our weapons should be able to crack it like all the others. Hayes nodded. "Signal all fleets. No Zirathi world survives. No Zirathi military unit escapes. This ends when their species is extinct." The message went out to every human ship in space. The war that had begun with the destruction of Europa Station was entering its final phase. The Zirathi Empire, which had ruled through fear for centuries, was about to learn what real fear felt like. And his fighter, Ben Parker, received the new orders and felt a cold satisfaction. The aliens who had murdered his friends were about to face the same fate they had given to so many others. Humanity had promised to make this hurt. Now they were keeping that promise. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution, watching Zirath Prime grow larger on the main screen. The alien capital world was a massive sphere of black metal and red lights, home to 20 billion Zirathi. It was the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. In 6 hours, it would be dead rock floating in space. Admiral, Lieutenant Ben Parker reported from the tactical station. Their orbital defenses are coming online. 200 defense platforms, each one bigger than our largest ships. Jake nodded. And our fleet? 50 ships armed with planet crackers. More than enough to turn this world into dust. The Zirathi had gathered every ship they could find to defend their homeworld. 300 vessels surrounded the planet like a steel wall. It was the largest fleet they had ever assembled. Their final desperate attempt to save their civilization. It would not be enough. Open a channel to the planet, Jake ordered. High Overlord Zex then appeared on the screen. The alien ruler looked older than he had in previous transmissions. His gray skin was pale with fear, and his multiple arms shook as he spoke. Human Commander, we wish to negotiate. The Zirathi Empire offers you tribute. Gold, technology, entire star systems. Name your price for peace. Jake's expression did not change. You had your chance for peace. You chose war when you murdered 50,000 people. On Europa Station? That was a mistake, Sexton pleaded. We did not understand your strength. We can coexist. We can share the galaxy. No, Jake said simply. You cannot. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Commander Blake, are the planet crackers ready? Commander Sarah Blake nodded from her station. The combat drugs had been flushed from her system, but her eyes still held the cold hardness of a killer. All weapons armed and ready, Admiral. We can crack this planet in half with one salvo. What about the civilian population? Intel estimates 20 billion Zirathi on the surface. No slave species remain. We evacuated the last of them from the outer worlds 3 days ago. Jake felt a moment of something that might have been regret. 20 billion lives would end in the next few hours. But then he remembered Europa Station. He remembered the 50,000 humans who had died for no reason except that they refused to surrender to tyrants. Signal the fleet. Operation Final. Justice begins now. The battle for Zirath Prime lasted 4 hours. The Zirathi threw everything they had at the human fleet. Their most advanced ships, their most powerful weapons, their best commanders. Ships that had conquered entire star systems fought with desperate courage. It made no difference. Dr. Alex Chun's weapons tore through their defenses like paper. Quantum disruptors opened holes in space that swallowed entire squadrons. The nanoplugs ate through their hulls like acid. The computer viruses turned their ships against each other. Lieutenant Ben Parker led his fighter squadron through the chaos of battle. Around him, massive alien ships exploded in balls of fire. The defense platforms that had protected Zirath Prime for centuries were reduced to floating scrap metal. Parker took control. He reported, "Outer defense perimeter is down. All enemy platforms destroyed." But the real target was not the fleet or the platforms. It was the planet itself. Admiral Morrison waited until the space around Zirath Prime was clear of enemy ships. The alien fleet was gone, destroyed or scattered. The orbital defenses were silent wreckage. Nothing stood between humanity and the Zirathi homeworld. Fire all planet crackers. he ordered .50 quantum resonance bombs launched from the human fleet. They struck the planet's surface and burrowed deep into the core. For a moment, Zereth Prime continued to spin peacefully in space, its black metal cities gleaming in the light of its red sun. Then the planet began to die. Massive earthquakes shook the surface. The great cities that had ruled an empire cracked and collapsed. Lava erupted from the core as the planet's gravity field began to fluctuate. 20 billion Zerethi looked up at their red sky and knew they were about to die. High Overlord Zex then stood in his palace as the walls crumbled around him. Through the falling debris, he could see human ships in orbit, watching his world tear itself apart. The species that had seemed so primitive just months ago had destroyed his empire and was now ending his entire race. How? He whispered to himself. How did they become so strong? The answer came from his dying planet. Humans had not become strong by conquering others. They had become strong by refusing to be conquered themselves. On Earth, President Kate Sullivan watched the destruction of Zereth Prime from her office. The planet that had been the heart of galactic tyranny was now an expanding cloud of rock and metal. The Zerethi Empire was dead. Dr. Chun, she said into her communicator, what is the status of our fleets? All human ships accounted for, Madam President. Minimal casualties. The Zerethi military has been completely destroyed. And the other species? The ones we liberated? 36 different alien races, freed from Zerethi slavery. They are asking, what happens now? Sullivan walked to her window and looked up at the stars. Out there, billions of beings were free for the first time in centuries. They had been saved by the same species that had just committed genocide against their former masters. Tell them that Earth is accepting applications for